Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoy my video, please click the like button and share the video. It is the only way the YouTube algorithms really notices me. I will be very grateful to you. Evil Spirit Possession, Grim Tales of Terror. Scary story published by Scare Fiction. Read 4 by Scare Fiction. Chapter 1, Arrival and Unease. Jenna gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles turning white as she navigated the winding road leading to Blackwood. The town emerged from the dense, mist-covered forest like a ghost from the past. Nestled in the hills of New England, Blackwood was a place forgotten by time, with its narrow streets and old-fashioned storefronts. The Victorian house she'd inherited loomed at the edge of town, its spires piercing the overcast sky like skeletal fingers. As Jenna stepped out of the car, the chill in the air cut through her coat, sending shivers down her spine. She stared up at the house, its once grand fayade now weathered and ominous. Townspeople watched from a distance, their whispers carried by the wind. Jenna could feel their eyes on her, a mix of curiosity and unease. "Miss, you sure you want to stay here?" a voice called out. Jenna turned to see an elderly man, his face lined with years of hard living. He leaned heavily on a cane, his gaze fixed on the house. "I don't have much choice," Jenna replied, forcing a smile. "It's all I have left." The man shook his head slowly. "That place, it's got a history. Be careful." With a nod, Jenna thanked him and made her way to the front door. The key turned with a reluctant creak, and she stepped inside, the air thick with the scent of dust and neglect. She wandered through the rooms, taking in the high ceilings and ornate woodwork, imagining the house in its prime. But now, it was a shell of its former self, shadows lurking in every corner. In the hallway, a large portrait caught her eye. It depicted a stern-looking woman in Victorian attire, her eyes cold and piercing. Jenna felt a strange unease, as if the woman was watching her every move. She shrugged off the feeling and continued exploring, determined to make this place her home. Later that evening, as Jenna unpacked, the sense of being watched grew stronger. She dismissed it as nerves and fatigue, but when she passed the portrait again, she froze. The woman's expression had changed. Her eyes, once hard and judgmental, now seemed to follow Jenna, a hint of a sinister smile playing on her lips. Jenna backed away, her heart pounding. She tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was the play of shadows, or her imagination running wild in the eerie silence. But deep down, she knew something was off. The house held secrets, dark and buried, and Jenna was now part of its story. As night fell, the house creaked and groaned, settling into the silence. Jenna lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. She had come to Blackwood seeking redemption, a fresh start. But as the darkness pressed in, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had walked into something far more sinister. The house seemed to breathe around her, its old bones whispering secrets of a past that refused to stay buried. And in the stillness, Jenna realized that her journey had only just begun. Chapter 2, The Unveiling of Secrets. Jenna couldn't shake the feeling of being watched as she settled into her new home in Blackwood. The unease from the strange noises and flickering lights had kept her on edge, but the discovery of the hidden room was a new layer of mystery she hadn't anticipated. It was a rainy afternoon when Jenna stumbled upon the hidden room. She was unpacking old boxes in the basement when she noticed an odd seam in the wall. Curiosity piqued. She pushed against the seam, and a section of the wall gave way, revealing a narrow passage. Heart pounding, she stepped inside, her flashlight beam slicing through the darkness. The room was filled with strange artifacts, dusty old books, peculiar trinkets, and an old journal that seemed out of place in the modern age. Jenna picked up the journal, its leather cover worn and cracked. Flipping through the pages, she found detailed accounts of rituals and ominous symbols that sent a shiver down her spine. Whoever had written this had been deeply entrenched in something dark and sinister. Determined to understand more about her new home, Jenna decided to explore Blackwood. She met Marcus while walking through the neighborhood. He was friendly, with an easy smile that belied a hint of skepticism. Jenna mentioned the hidden room and the strange artifacts, hoping for some local insight. Old houses in Blackwood have their fair share of secrets, Marcus said, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. But a hidden room? That's something you don't hear every day. If you're really curious, you should check out the public library. Sarah, the town historian, knows everything about this place. Encouraged by Marcus's suggestion, Jenna made her way to the Blackwood Public Library. The building itself was a relic from another era, its Gothic architecture adding to the town's eerie charm. Inside, the smell of old books and polished wood was comforting. Jenna found Sarah in a corner of the library, surrounded by stacks of books. She was a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a warm, if reserved, demeanor. Jenna introduced herself and recounted her discovery. Sarah's expression grew serious. "The house you're living in has a long history, Jenna. It was built by the Blackwood family, who were deeply involved in the occult. There have been rumors of strange happenings there for decades." Jenna felt a chill as Sarah continued. "The journal you found likely belonged to one of the family members. They were known for conducting rituals and amassing artifacts from around the world. Many believe that they awakened something they couldn't control." The weight of Sarah's words settled heavily on Jenna. Her new home was not just a house. It was a repository of dark secrets and unfinished stories. The journal in her possession was more than just a relic. It was a key to understanding the malevolent forces at play. Jenna left the library with a growing sense of purpose. She needed to unravel the mysteries of the Blackwood house, not just for her own peace of mind, but to uncover the truth behind the strange occurrences that seemed to haunt her every step. The town of Blackwood held many secrets, and Jenna was determined to unveil them, no matter where the dark path might lead. Chapter 3: Dark Manifestations. The unsettling quiet of Jenna's new home had transformed into something more sinister. Each night, the whispers grew louder, a cacophony of unintelligible murmurs that filled the dark corners of her mind. She could no longer dismiss the fleeting shadows that danced just out of sight, or the cold drafts that seemed to follow her from room to room. The discovery of the hidden room and its dark artifacts weighed heavily on her, seeping into her thoughts and dreams. One evening, as Jenna tried to focus on the journal in the dim light of her living room, the temperature plummeted. Her breath turned to mist in the air, and the whispers began again, more insistent and invasive. She closed her eyes, willing them to stop, but the whispers coalesced into a single, chilling voice that seemed to come from within her own mind. "Jenna," it hissed, "you cannot escape us." She dropped the journal, her hands trembling. The room spun, and for a moment, she wasn't sure if she was awake or trapped in a nightmare. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to stretch and grow, taking on grotesque forms that reached out towards her. Frantic, Jenna called Marcus. His voice on the other end of the line was a lifeline, grounding her in reality. "Marcus, I need you to come over. Something's happening. I can't explain it, but I need you here." Marcus arrived within minutes, concern etched on his face. As soon as he stepped inside, the temperature dropped again, and a palpable sense of dread filled the air. They stood in the living room, the silence between them heavy with unspoken fears. Without warning, a shadowy figure materialized in the hallway. It was more defined than the previous apparitions, its form tall and menacing. Marcus froze, his skepticism melting away in an instant. "What the hell?" he muttered, his voice barely a whisper. The figure advanced, its movements slow and deliberate. Jenna clutched Marcus's arm, her fear palpable. "Do you believe me now?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Marcus nodded, his eyes wide with terror. "We need to get out of here," he said, pulling Jenna towards the door. As they fled the house, the whispers followed them, a constant reminder of the darkness they had left behind. In the relative safety of Marcus's car, Jenna's mind raced. The line between reality and hallucination had blurred beyond recognition, and she felt herself slipping into a state of paranoia. Marcus, shaken but determined, glanced over at her. "We need to find out what we're dealing with. This isn't just some haunted house, Jenna. There's something seriously wrong here." Jenna nodded, her resolve hardening. "Sarah said the Blackwood family was involved in the occult. We need to find out exactly what they did and why these things are happening now." The drive to the library was tense, the weight of their shared fear hanging over them. Sarah greeted them with a knowing look, her expression grim as she listened to their account of the night's events. "We're dealing with forces that go beyond simple hauntings," Sarah said, her voice steady. "The Blackwood family dabbled in dark rituals, and it seems they've left a legacy of malevolence behind. The whispers, the shadows, they're manifestations of something much darker." Jenna felt a chill run down her spine. The terror was growing, not just in intensity, but in its psychological grip on her. As she and Marcus delved deeper into the town's history and the Blackwood family's secrets, the line between reality and nightmare continued to blur, threatening to consume her entirely. But Jenna knew she couldn't turn back now. She had to confront the darkness head-on, no matter the cost. Chapter 4. The Historical Revelation. The drive to Sarah's home was cloaked in a tense silence, broken only by the occasional whisper of wind through the trees. Jenna's mind raced, filled with fragments of the whispers and shadowy figures that haunted her nights. Marcus's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his eyes darting nervously to the rearview mirror, as if expecting to see something other than the dark road behind them. Sarah's home was a stark contrast to the gloom outside. Warm light spilled from the windows, and the scent of burning candles mingled with the comforting aroma of old books. She ushered them in, her demeanor a mix of urgency and grim determination. "We need to talk," Sarah said, leading them to her study. Shelves lined with ancient tomes and artifacts framed the room. She pulled out a large, leather-bound book and laid it on the table. "This is the history of Blackwood. It's time you knew the truth." Jenna and Marcus listened intently as Sarah recounted the town's dark past. Centuries ago, a cult operated in Blackwood. They were obsessed with summoning a powerful spirit, a malevolent entity they believed could grant them unimaginable power. They performed dark rituals, sacrificing innocents to strengthen their bond with the spirit. Sarah's eyes darkened as she continued. But something went wrong. The spirit they summoned was beyond their control, wreaking havoc and demanding more sacrifices. The cult tried to contain it, but their efforts only bound it to the land, cursing Blackwood for generations. Jenna felt a chill run down her spine. And now it's back, isn't it? The spirit, the shadows, it's all connected. Sarah nodded. Yes, the spirit is still bound to Blackwood, and it's growing stronger. But there's hope. I found references to an old church, abandoned and forgotten. It's where the cult first summoned the spirit. If we can find it, we might uncover a way to banish the entity for good. They wasted no time, driving to the outskirts of town where the abandoned church stood, a decaying relic of a forgotten era. Church was a crumbling edifice, overgrown with vines and shrouded in darkness. The air was thick with the sense of something ancient and evil lingering within. Inside, they found the remains of the cult's altar, scattered with remnants of their dark rituals. Among the debris was a ritual book, its pages brittle and yellowed with age. Jenna carefully opened it, revealing detailed instructions on how to summon and banish the spirit. "This is it," Sarah said, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and hope. "This book contains the ritual to banish the spirit. We have a chance to end this nightmare." Jenna's heart pounded as she read the ancient text. The instructions were complex, requiring precise actions and specific artifacts. "We need to gather everything listed here and perform the ritual exactly as described," she said. "It's our only hope." The gravity of their task settled over them. The deepening mystery and the ancient evil they faced were daunting, but they knew they had no choice. They had to confront the spirit head-on, using the knowledge and tools left behind by those who had failed before them. As they left the church, a sense of resolve filled Jenna. The terror of the past days had transformed into a determination to end the spirit's reign of fear. They were no longer just victims. They were fighters, ready to face the ancient evil and reclaim their lives from the darkness that had haunted Blackwood for centuries. Chapter 5. The Possession. The drive back from the abandoned church was filled with a heavy silence, the gravity of their discovery pressing down on Jenna and Marcus. Jenna clutched the ritual book tightly, her mind racing with the steps they needed to take. As they reached her house, an ominous feeling settled over her, the shadows seeming deeper and more menacing than before. That night, Jenna couldn't sleep. She felt a strange, oppressive presence in her home, as if the very walls were closing in on her. Her thoughts became disjointed, and she struggled to maintain a grip on reality. The whispers that had haunted her nights returned, more insistent and clear. "Jenna," the voice hissed, "you belong to us now." She stumbled to the bathroom, splashing cold water on her face, trying to shake off the growing dread. When she looked up, her reflection seemed distorted, her eyes darker, her expression twisted with fear and confusion. She backed away, trembling, as the shadows in the room seemed to stretch toward her. The next morning, Marcus noticed the change in Jenna immediately. Her eyes were wild, her movements erratic. She snapped at him for no reason, her voice tinged with a harshness that wasn't hers. "Jenna, what's wrong? Talk to me," he pleaded. "I'm fine," she snapped, her tone icy. But she wasn't fine. The spirit was taking hold, and Jenna could feel her sense of self slipping away. She tried to fight it, to hold on to her thoughts and actions, but it was like trying to grasp smoke. Marcus grew increasingly concerned. One evening, he found Jenna in the hidden room, surrounded by the artifacts. She was muttering to herself, her eyes unfocused. "Jenna, we need to get you out of here," he said, reaching for her. She turned to him, her face a mask of fury. "Leave me alone," she screamed, her voice a mix of her own and something darker. She shoved him away, the force surprising them both. Marcus stumbled back, realizing the severity of the situation. "Jenna, this isn't you," he said softly, his heart breaking as he saw the torment in her eyes. "We need to fight this together." But Jenna was losing the battle. That night, she found herself drawn to the hidden room once more. As she stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind her. The room seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, the shadows writhing around her. She tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. Terrifying visions assaulted her. She saw the cultists performing their dark rituals, their faces twisted with madness. She saw her own mother, trapped and tormented by the spirit. The line between past and present blurred, and Jenna felt herself slipping further into the spirit's control. "Help me," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. But there was no one to hear her. Hours later, Marcus found Jenna, huddled in the corner of the hidden room, her body shaking, her eyes vacant. He knelt beside her, his own fear and desperation mirrored in her eyes. "Jenna, I'm here. We're going to get through this," he whispered, holding her tightly. Jenna clung to him, the spirit's grip on her mind loosening slightly in the warmth of his embrace. But she knew the battle was far from over. The spirit was still there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for its next opportunity to take control. And Jenna knew she had to fight with everything she had to reclaim her mind and her life. Chapter 6: The Descent in Madness. The days following Jenna's possession were a nightmare of chaos and fear. The once serene town of Blackwood now buzzed with whispered rumors and uneasy glances. Jenna's erratic behavior and the bizarre incidents that followed had everyone on edge. Marcus and Sarah worked tirelessly, their faces etched with worry. Jenna's outbursts had escalated, leading to inexplicable incidents around town. Streetlights flickering and exploding, animals found dead under mysterious circumstances, and an eerie cold that seemed to follow her wherever she went. Town's peace was shattered, and people were growing increasingly frightened. In the dim light of Sarah's study, the two friends pored over the ritual book, their desperation palpable. Sarah flipped through the brittle pages, her eyes scanning the faded text. "We need to understand what the spirit is trying to achieve," she said, her voice strained. "There's a pattern to these incidents, and it's connected to Jenna." Marcus's brow furrowed as he read alongside her. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a section of the book. "It mentions a ritual that requires a living vessel to complete. The spirit was never fully bound, and it needs Jenna to finish the dark ritual it started centuries ago." Sarah's face went pale. "That's why the spirit is targeting her so aggressively. It's using her to complete a ritual that will increase its power beyond anything we've ever seen. It needs her to open a gateway to a realm of darkness." The realization hit them like a punch to the gut. The spirit's motive was not just to torment Jenna, but to use her as a conduit to unleash unimaginable evil upon the world. With renewed urgency, Marcus and Sarah decided they needed to act quickly. They scoured the town for any clue that might lead them to the spirit's ritual site. Sarah recalled an old cemetery on the outskirts of Blackwood, a place with a reputation for being haunted. "The cemetery was once associated with the cult," she said. "It might be where the spirit is trying to complete its ritual." They headed to the cemetery under the cover of darkness, their flashlights cutting through the oppressive fog. The place was eerily silent, the gravestones standing like sentinels over the resting dead. As they ventured deeper into the cemetery, they stumbled upon an old, forgotten mausoleum, partially buried under years of neglect. Inside, the air was thick with the stench of decay and something far more sinister. The walls were covered with symbols similar to those in the ritual book. A large, worn altar stood in the center, and scattered around it were remnants of past rituals, bloodstains, faded candles, and ancient artifacts. "This must be where the spirit plans to complete the ritual," Marcus said, his voice trembling. "We have to find a way to stop it before Jenna is lost forever." Sarah nodded, her eyes resolute. "We need to prepare for the final confrontation. The ritual book has detailed instructions on how to disrupt the ceremony. But we have to be careful. The spirit will do everything it can to stop us." As they prepared to face the dark force threatening Jenna and Blackwood, the weight of their task settled heavily upon them. They knew that time was running out. Jenna's possession was a symptom of a greater evil at work, and they had to act swiftly to save her and prevent the spirit from completing its dark plan. The descent into madness had begun, and they were determined to end it, no matter the cost. Chapter 7. The Ritual. The night was a pitch-black expanse, only broken by the dim glow of their flashlights. The cemetery loomed ahead, an ancient and foreboding place where the spirit was ready to complete its dark ritual. Jenna, now a puppet of the malevolent entity, moved with an unnatural grace, her eyes glazed and her movements mechanical. Marcus and Sarah, hearts pounding with a mix of fear and determination, watched from the shadows. They knew the moment had come. Jenna was being led toward the heart of the cemetery, where the cult's ancient altar awaited. The abandoned church, a mile away, was their last bastion of hope. Inside, Marcus and Sarah prepared the counter-ritual with trembling hands. The air was thick with the scent of old, musty wood and lingering dread. They laid out the artifacts and performed the necessary preparations, their eyes scanning the ritual book for each precise step. Suddenly, the church's old doors slammed shut, rattling with an unseen force. The walls seemed to pulse with malevolent energy, and the temperature dropped drastically. Shadows twisted and writhed, forming grotesque shapes that advanced on them with malicious intent. Marcus gripped a crucifix, reciting the incantations with fervor. Sarah, clutching a vial of sacred water, sprinkled it around the ritual circle. "We need to hold the circle," she urged, her voice barely audible over the howling wind that seemed to surge through the church. "The spirit is trying to disrupt us." As the dark energy intensified, Jenna's voice echoed in the cemetery, chanting the words of the ancient ritual. Her face was contorted in a mask of fear and agony, fighting against the spirit's control. The malevolent entity was almost palpable, a swirling mass of darkness that pressed against the bounds of reality. In the church, Marcus and Sarah struggled against the supernatural forces attempting to breach their protective circle. The air crackled with energy, and the shadows took on terrifying. Marcus's voice wavered as he read from the book, his hands shaking with exhaustion. "We have to finish this," he said through gritted teeth. "It's our only chance." As Jenna's chanting grew louder, the spirit's power seemed to surge, threatening to overpower them. The ground beneath the cemetery quaked, and the ancient altar began to glow with an eerie light. The spirit's laughter, a chilling sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, filled the night. Sarah, her face set in grim determination, stepped forward, using the remaining holy symbols to strengthen their barrier. "We need to pull Jenna back," she cried. "She's at the edge of the spirit's influence." Inside the church, Marcus focused on the final incantation, the words almost lost in the chaos. He felt the weight of the world on his shoulders as he completed the ritual's final step. The church walls trembled, and a brilliant flash of light erupted from the center of the ritual circle. Back at the cemetery, Jenna's body convulsed as the spirit's control weakened. She fought internally, her mind a battleground of despair and defiance. With a final, wrenching cry, she broke free from the spirit's grasp, collapsing to the ground. The spirit's roar of frustration and rage echoed through the night as its form dissipated, sucked into the void created by Marcus and Sarah's counter-ritual. The cemetery fell silent, the oppressive darkness lifting as dawn approached. Exhausted and battered, Marcus and Sarah hurried to Jenna's side. They helped her up, relief and sadness mingling in their eyes. "We did it," Marcus said, his voice filled with both triumph and sorrow. "It's over." As they left the cemetery, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon, they knew the battle between good and evil had been won, but the scars would remain. The power of friendship and loyalty had seen them through the darkest of nights, and they were forever changed by the struggle they had endured. Chapter 8. Aftermath and Redemption. The first rays of dawn crept through the cracks in Jenna's curtains, casting a gentle light over the battered room. The previous night had been a harrowing ordeal, but the spirit was finally banished. Jenna lay in bed, her body bruised and weary, her mind still reeling from the intensity of the final confrontation. Marcus sat in a chair beside her, his leg wrapped in a makeshift bandage. His face was pale, and his eyes carried the weight of their ordeal. Despite the exhaustion and pain, he managed a faint smile as Jenna stirred. "Morning," he said softly. "You're awake." Jenna nodded, her gaze fixed on the ceiling. She felt a profound emptiness, a void left by the spirit's departure. The haunting presence was gone, but its impact lingered like a shadow over her life. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus winced as he shifted. "I'll be okay," he said. "Just a few broken ribs and some bruises. Nothing we can't handle." His attempt at reassurance fell flat, his eyes betraying his own pain. "We did it, Jenna. It's over." Outside, Blackwood was slowly returning to normal. The cemetery was quiet now, the air clear of the dark energy that had plagued it. Townspeople, though shaken, began to resume their routines, the whispers of fear gradually fading. The scars of the past were still fresh, but the town was healing. Jenna looked around her house, the place where so much horror had unfolded. It seemed strange now, almost serene. The hidden room was sealed, its dark secrets contained. She and Marcus had spent hours cleaning and repairing, trying to reclaim a sense of normalcy. The door creaked open, and Sarah stepped inside, carrying a bouquet of flowers. "Thought you might like some company," she said, her eyes filled with a mix of sympathy and relief. "The town is starting to pick up the pieces. It'll take time, but we'll get there." Jenna smiled weakly, taking the flowers. "Thank you, Sarah, for everything. I don't know what I'd have done without you." Sarah nodded. "We all played a part. We made it through because we stuck together." She paused, her expression thoughtful. "You know, Jenna, you have a lot of strength. You should use it." Jenna considered her words. The spirit's defeat had come at a steep price, but it had also shown her a new path. "I think I will stay in Blackwood," she said, her voice firm. "There's so much that needs to be done rebuilding, helping the community heal. I want to be a part of that." Sarah's eyes brightened. "I'm sure the town will be glad to have you." As the days turned into weeks, Jenna found solace in her new purpose. She worked tirelessly to help the town recover, to mend the wounds left by the spirit's reign of terror. She attended town meetings, offered support to those who had been affected, and helped organize events to bring the community together. The process of healing was slow and arduous, but Jenna faced it with determination and hope. The scars of her past remained, but they were a reminder of her resilience and strength. The darkness that had once consumed her was now a part of her history, a chapter in her life that had shaped her into someone who was not only a survivor, but a beacon of hope. Jenna looked out over Blackwood, feeling a sense of peace and redemption. The town was slowly rebuilding, and so was she. The haunting was over, but the lessons and the strength she had gained would stay with her forever. The journey had been harrowing, but it had led her to a new beginning, a chance to make a difference and to ensure that the darkness of the past would never return.